Hey, my name is Anders, and I would like to share with you my Danish rye bread recipe. Now, the reason I want to do this is because I don't think that YouTube has any good videos out there showing how to make a proper Danish rye bread, and also because the taste is fantastic and it will keep you full for a long time. My recipe only contains rye flour, cracked rye seeds, and sourdough, and salt, of course. And this is just like rye bread should be. Now, it takes 2 days if you have a sourdough before, and if you don't have a sourdough, then you can look a recipe up on YouTube and just use rye flour instead of the normal flour. Um, on day one, then you'll mix the starter dough, and that will rest overnight for or approximately 12 hours in room temperature. And the next day, you'll mix in the rest of the ingredients and you'll bake the bread. So it's sort of a 2-day project. Anyway, so my sourdough is here and it's been in the fridge for about a week or so. So it's not that active anymore, but because of the bubbles on top, you might be able to see it. And the smell of beer and overly ripe apples, then I know it's active and it should contain lactobacilli and yeast. So just add that to the bowl. The amount doesn't matter, it's more like a question of the amount of bacteria and the amount of yeast you have in your sourdough. So basically how active it is. And I think you'll just have to do trial and error just to make sure to get a feeling about how your sourdough is working. And as you probably can tell, I'm recording one-handed, so I'm sorry for the bad recording, and I really don't hope that you get seasick from watching. But if you're not sure if your sourdough is active or not, then you could throw half of it away, add some new, feed some new water and rye flour to it, let it rest in room temperature until it starts bubble and become airy, and the smell is like beer and ripe apples. If it smells of vinegar though, then there's probably too many acidic acid bacteria in it, and means that your sourdough is bad, and then you'll have to start a new one. And then I'm adding the water and just make sure that the mixture is that the sourdough is mixed in and dissolved completely. Okay, so when the sourdough is dissolved completely, then you can add the rye flour to make the starter dough, and that is actually all you need to make the starter dough. And don't worry about the exact measurements. I don't measure at all when I'm baking because it takes too long time and you cannot really rely on measurements anyway, because the flour that you buy one day might need more water than the flour that you buy the next day, or your rye seeds might need to soak in more water than mine, and vice versa. And also, I think it's important to know the stages and the process of baking instead of just doing measurements. Or at least to me, I think it's more fun if you know the stages and know what's actually going on. The consistency for the starter dough that I normally choose is like you can see here. Just turn it around a bit so you can get a chance to see better. I think as long as it's loose and not too thick, then it should be fine. And that is all for the starter dough. Then you'll just need to cover it and let it rest for up to or around 12 hours. I think it depends on the temperature and the moisture in your kitchen, but 12 hours is perfect in mine. Okay, at this stage you might also want to soak some cracked rye in water, just so that they won't take away all the moisture from the bread and you'll end up with a bread that is like stone. So I'll just add the cracked rye to a bowl and then I'll cover it with water, and the amount of water again depends on the rye seeds that you have, and I think you'll just have to add enough water and then it should be fine. And when I've added the water, then I'll just give it a stir, and that's it for day one. Then you'll just have to cover both bowls up, and I just normally use a tea towel, cover it and leave it for around 12 hours. Okay, so on day two we'll mix in the rest of the ingredients and we'll bake the rye bread. So my starter dough have some visible bubbles in it, even though it's not that active. Yours might have huge bubbles, and it might even have separated into two phases, and that is a good sign. But firstly, I'll add some malt syrup. You can also use normal dark syrup if you don't have any malt syrup, but I'd recommend using malt syrup. Some flax seeds, some sunflower seeds, the soaked rye from yesterday, and a spoonful of salt. Even though I forgot to record it, it's really important, so remember the salt. Then I'll mix everything together, and now it's the time to adjust the consistency with rye flour. And I needed to add rye flour twice to get the consistency right. And the consistency should be loose enough to fall from the spoon, but thick enough just to fall off in lumps, just as you can see here. Okay, so when that is done, then you add the dough to a baking form and you smear it out just to avoid big bubbles inside the bread. And I tend to make a V shape down the dough so that the more dough gets to the edges compared to the middle. And this is only because the middle normally will rise more than the sides. And by making the V, then the bread gets a flat top instead of a round one. And I really like the flat top. And also, when I cannot see the V shape anymore, then I know that the bread has risen and it's ready for baking. When that's done, cover the dough with film and leave it at room temperature until the bread has risen, and it normally takes 3 hours. And when it has risen to the top, then remove the film and poke small deep holes in it. And I normally use a knitting pen, and this is to let the water escape and let the heat get inside the bread when it's baking. And when that is done, then bake the bread in the middle of a normal oven, not the fan heated one. Set it to 180 degrees Celsius or 350 Fahrenheit and bake it for 1 hour and 15 minutes. And then you take the bread out of the oven and you poke a thermometer in it, and it should be around just below 100 Celsius or below 200 Fahrenheit. Then you know that the bread is done. You can also look at the thermometer to see that none of the dough sticks to it, or at least not that much. That's a good sign also. And the last thing you can do is to poke it, and if it sounds hollow, then it's baked. And then I remove it from the form and put it back in the oven and give it 15 more minutes. And when the 15 minutes have passed, then you remove it from the oven. And I know you want to cut it right away, but you shouldn't. That will just ruin the whole rye bread. Let it cool down until it has reached room temperature. I think it takes 6 to 7 hours. And that's it. Then you can cut it after that, and it should look like this, and hopefully it'll be delicious. Thanks for watching.